As talks on the Union continued, Gorbachev, still president of the USSR, was isolated.
Главное, на что ушло, наверное, половина времени, каким быть союзом.
At Minsk, on December the 8th, Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, the three Slav states, acted to dissolve the Soviet Union and set up instead a commonwealth of independent states. The Soviet Union was finished, and so was Mikhail Gorbachev. They told George Bush before telling Gorbachev what they'd done.
It's disgraceful to tell the President of the United States and not bother to inform the President of your own country. It's shameful. Absolutely contemptible. It's dirty.
For 45 years, the world feared a nuclear apocalypse. It never came. Statesmen on both sides who had the power to push the nuclear button in crisis after crisis put humanity's interest first. Nuclear deterrence kept the peace.
The world is a far safer place now that the Cold War is over. No leader of a small country is worrying and saying to his cabinet, one of these two crazy superpowers is going to get us caught up in a nuclear war. That is not going to happen.
Those of us who experienced what I would call the fever of the Cold War, the permanent state of alarm about the prospect of a nuclear war, we breathe more easily now. We no longer have to carry this heavy burden.
The Cold War ended peaceably, but need it have begun? Could it all have been avoided when East and West were comrades back in 1945?
We missed our chance because there were so many suspicions on both sides. The West exaggerated the strength of the Soviet Union. We could not possibly have moved into Europe. We were a devastated country. We'd lost millions of people.
I can't imagine any circumstances under which we could have gotten along with Uncle Joe Stalin. I can imagine no circumstances under which we could have worked out our problems with Russia earlier than we did, or in a different way. I've come to the conclusion we did it pretty goddamn well.
Millions who might have died in nuclear conflict lived and prospered. But there were costs, human and material, and a price to pay. The manufacture and testing of nuclear weapons left a continuing mark.
The legacy of the Cold War really means that the Cold War is still going on. It's going on because the air, water, and soil are polluted. It's very expensive and difficult to overcome this legacy. It's really a delayed action time bomb.
During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union between them spent trillions of dollars on armaments. The United States borrowing heavily, could afford it. The Soviet Union, in the end, could not. Part of that vast cost was necessary to maintain the balance on which world peace depended. Some of it was wasted. There were shooting wars within the Cold War. They took their toll. In Korea, millions died. And millions in Vietnam, soldiers and civilians. Over 1 million died in Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands died in Africa and in Central America. Some of these wars would have happened anyway. The Cold War made them more deadly. Thousands died in a divided Europe. $200 at the Berlin Wall. The living mourn the dead.
Неправда. И камни говорят даже. Я прихожу сюда на могилу сына и только облегчаю здесь свою боль. Могу успокоиться, поговорить с ним, посоветоваться.
And look, he's right here, where my lips can reach him. He isn't up high where I can't reach him or down low where I can't bend anymore. He's right here in front of me.
The Cold War was a clash of ideologies. And the big Cold War loser was Marxism-Leninism. The communist dream of a better society that would outlast the West came to nothing. But not for Fidel Castro.
Why believe that the ideals of socialism, which are so generous and appeal so much to solidarity and fraternity, will one day disappear? What would prevail? Selfishness? Individualism? Personal ambitions? That will not save the world. Of that I'm absolutely convinced.
Communism as a system went against life, against man's fundamental needs, against the need for freedom, the need to be enterprising, to associate freely, against the will of the nation. It suppressed national identity. Something that goes against life may last a long time, but sooner or later it will collapse.
The superpowers had confronted each other relentlessly. Now, under intolerable pressure, one side withdrew. Gorbachev had done as much as anyone to end the Cold War. He called Bush and told him this was his last day in office.
There was a kind of sadness. The finality of it hit me pretty hard, and it was Christmas time and holiday time. And I felt that a friend was hurt, and I wasn't happy about that.
That night, the red flag of the Soviet Union was lowered for the last time. In Washington, Bush made his Christmas broadcast.
For over 40 years, the United States led the West in the struggle against communism and the threat it posed to our most precious values. This struggle shaped the lives of all Americans. It forced all nations to live under the specter of nuclear destruction. That confrontation is now over.